Guys, welcome to this video. Thanks so much for tuning in and sharing in this now moment with myself and with one another. If you haven't seen these videos before, welcome back if you have. My intention is unity and oneness in the highest levels of love light. I'm just going to share a little energy update, a lot of fire going on right now. I want to talk a little bit about some of the things I've been shown by my higher self in regards to what's happening with the energies. I want to talk a little bit about synchronicities with other light workers. And yeah, so welcome. A little bit of this is going to be fairly simple, just energy wise, what I've been feeling. And some of it's going to be a little bit, as my husband would call, abstract. Sometimes he'll go, honey, I don't know what you're saying. It's really abstract to me. I'm more in the 3D grounded world and you're out here in 5D floating around, whatever that means. So I'll just start with that. So I've been doing a lot of traveling and I haven't been doing as many videos and I just haven't had time. And what I've been called to do is more writing and share more about the writing and of course sessions as well. And as I do this work, I will then share it with you guys when I have time. And so I'm kind of in between traveling right now, so I'm able to kind of commit to a video. And I'm hoping to get more balanced as well. And I wanted to talk about that. That's one of the messages that's been coming in. So balance has been kind of key for a lot of us. Like, how do we find balance within all of the energies that we've been experiencing? We're in Leo season, it's fiery, we've got solar flares, it seems like there's total chaos around us. If you turn on the news for a moment, which I'm not encouraging you to, but my husband likes to watch the news occasionally, it's fiery, it's messy. It always has been, but obviously since the last 2 years, it seems much more heightened, much more ramped up. But I'm not here to talk about that. That's not my cup of tea. And that's something I wanted to just kind of talk about energetically. What is your cup of tea, right? What is it that makes you feel with the glass half full? What is it that that lights your spark? And essentially, in amongst all of this fire where people are really getting triggered, there's this need that I've been seeing, people feeling the need to express themselves. And the question becomes, we all express ourselves based on the perspective that we're holding in that moment. And so we might find that there are people expressing themselves based on a perspective that they're holding at that moment, yet moment to moment, that perspective is changing. So we're really being called to do our inner work, take responsibility, and that changes how we respond, right, to the action that we're seeing on out there. And so it puts us into a place of, rather than feeling the need to jump right in and really kind of reflect, because that's essentially what's happening for a lot of us. Some of us are being called to be the referee because that's what we do really well. And others of us are choosing to extract ourselves from this fiery whatever's going on right now energetically. I'm kind of seeing it across the board. I will be doing sharing some synchronicities that I've had with, again, other light workers, teachers, humans, whatever we want to call them. And part of this message goes into that as well, because there's still a lot going on with the need to be right, the need to be heard, right? That's kind of a theme that's been going on. The need to be right about this particular piece of history, the need to be right about this particular view or philosophy. This is the way it is. And that's just not how I roll. I have a tendency to dip into a lot of different philosophies, and I have a tendency to feel into many different dimensional perspectives. And that doesn't necessarily translate as easily as being completely solidified in a particular belief does. but that's kind of how I roll. So I'm being guided to share this with you guys because that isn't necessarily the only way to roll, but based on my own work, my own inner journeying and seeking to know thyself and to constantly work within these different fields on staying in a place of coherence and compassion and all of those things has led me to where I am now. And that has included and involved shadow work. That doesn't mean, and it's included and involved many different versions of work. So however that looks for us, it's going to look different for all of us at different times. And some of us, I mean, we've got it all going on all the time right now. Earth changes, this, that, the other thing. I mean, you name it, it's happening. It's all here now. So more and more, rather than jumping into this ring of fire that from my perspective, I'm kind of seeing as, whoa, it is hot in there. I kind of like it out here where I can feel the heat, but I don't necessarily have to get burned, right? And everybody's got a different flavor. Some people are all about that fire and some people are all about retreat. I'm kind of in the middle of both. However, I'm recognizing that what makes me happy, what brings me joy, and what helps me to understand more of what I am creating and what I want to create is not putting on boxing gloves. I'm seeing kangaroos. Like, it isn't going down under into the flames. Australia kangaroos. Anyways, I'm in a little bit of a flow right now. But having said that, I'm just sharing this as an energy update of what I'm seeing in the collective. And so I'm really being called to go within and actually retreat right now and just focus on my writing, focus on my sessions, focus on my own inner tuition. When I say inner tuition, it makes me think of when you pay for school, you're paying tuition, putting value in my own messages, in my own understanding, understanding, right? In my own value system. And this then systematically upgrades and charges my battery and lights my fire. I don't need somebody else to light my fire, so to speak. But I'm not knocking that, because for some people, they need that in order to ignite those flames, in order to get them fired up so that they can alchemize, so that they can shift, so that they can change. But if we can find a place where we acknowledge and recognize that that's what's happening, then we can get ignited, but we see, know, and understand a lot more about why we're being ignited, what it is that's causing this reaction, what it is that we're reacting to, what it is that we are alchemizing, and we become more conscious observers and interaction takers when we explore this fire without needing to project. And I'm seeing like a dragon like throwing out its flames on everybody. I am right. So having said that, that's a little disclaimer, because I'm about to share some synchronicities that have come up for me that light my fire. And I recognize that not everybody agrees with everything that all teachers say. And I certainly don't either. I like to, I was one of those that if you get me a box of chocolates, I take a bite out of each one. It's usually why I have my own box of chocolates, because I like to taste each one. And I may not want that whole chocolate. I might just want a little piece of it. So I look at it like I take bits and pieces that are coming into me, into my awareness, into my knowingness, into my field. And then I match that up to my knowingness. And I then use my discernment, which is, I still am learning, right? It's a constant learning, self-mastery, I think, for most of us. I'm just laughing because if you're already there, awesome. There's some people that believe that they're already there, and that's their perspective based on where they are now. And I'm seeing that is even a projection on some people. So my point is, I've been called to go back within and really acknowledge where I'm at, what's lighting my fire and what isn't, and just not put my focus on things that aren't. I have, from my own personal perspective, needed certain people to instigate or trigger certain things within me, because that has created that anger is sometimes better than apathy, right? Despondent, not doing anything at all. At least some people get fired up and then make a change. Then they may not stay fired up. They might realize that they really weren't angry over that. It was just something that they weren't necessarily, they hadn't processed yet. And so it triggered them. I'm just using that as an example with this fiery energy. So the more we can take a deep breath and let it all out 5 times maybe before we say something, right, is really key right now from what I'm seeing energetically. And really getting into that space, we're all, I know this is such a, one of those phrases, but we really are all on earth together. So I'm being called, how am I creating my reality? What is it that I'm creating? And I'm being called to go back into that flow of, if I'm projecting something based on my perspective of where I'm at now, and then I project that onto someone else, then my perspective changes slightly because my angle changes and how I'm viewing things, maybe the next day or an hour later or a week later. And then I realize I've already spewed projectile all over that person. Then it changes the experience, where it could have been experienced a little differently, but we still could have gotten the same nutrients from that experience just by taking a moment to have a conversation. It doesn't have to always be, again, that reference to the lion, put them up, right? It could just be, let's talk about this. Or that can also be a projection, because just because we want to talk about it doesn't mean that the other person does. And this all comes back to us recognizing and acknowledging everybody's in a different place. And so if we judge that other person should be communicating with me, but they're not, that's on us. So a lot of this is reflections, right, of way life used to be. Okay. So the other song that's been coming up for me is Gold Dust Woman, right? Is it Fleetwood Mac, Stevie Nicks? I don't know. Rock on, Gold Dust Woman. As I write, this comes in, this song, and it plays a lot. That and something about horses. Bring on the dance. Is that Echo and the Bunnymen? Horses? Anyways. So I pulled some cards this week for the collective, and I'm just trying to make this kind of short and sweet as best I can. The cards I pulled were Wild Boar, Confrontation. My friend Jess and Candace were talking about Mars energies being very big right now, so that would make sense. Fear and Rabbit, but it was upside down, and Horse, which is freedom and power. So if I look at those 3 animal medicines, I'm kind of going back into that just for a moment. There is this confronting our fears and recognizing we're free to do so. Some people are being confrontational out of fear because they feel like their power is being taken away, but they're really giving it away. I mean, we could spin those cards around in so many different directions. And some of us are realizing that we are free and we don't have to respond out of fear or confrontation. So everybody is experiencing these energies in a different way. And again, it all comes back to us acknowledging and not projecting, not judging. And it's okay if that person that's what they're doing. You know, a lot of songs today. It's your thing, do what you want to do. Okay, so I digress into so many different songs. Okay, so The other card was Field of Plenty. And these are Jamie Sam's cards that changed my life. I'm looking for the book. I have a little library right here. Anyways, Jamie Sams is the author. She does the animal medicine and these native cards that are just amazing. I can't remember the name of them right now. But the medicine was Field of Plenty. And so that's abundance. And I saw that as so many different meanings. There is an abundance of teachers out there. There's an abundance of information. There is an abundance rolling in of knowledge and communication and light and love. And there's also on the upside down world, the same thing. So which way do we want to play? And I'm finding more and more that you can utilize both shadow work and light work, but they're one and the same. And it's not, boy, Elvis, we just watched the Elvis movie, my husband and I, not getting caught in the trap of one or the other and finding that balance and ability to stabilize the frequencies within our own human, our own color scheme, our own color schematic, and not necessarily getting stuck in one particular way, wavelength, bandwidth, way of things, one particular band only. And this is also kind of a dichotomy because I'll show you what I was drawing. So I was shown this in meditation, which is strings and bubbles. They're all the same bubbles, even though they don't look the same. But one string is 1, 2, and 3. I was shown 3 strings, and this isn't exact. And I was shown, let's call 1 3D, 2 4D, and 3 5D. And by the way, again, really being called to remind everybody, I'm just here to present my visions and visuals as a tool, maybe an activation, maybe give a little bit of insight as to how I see things as a healer, and we are all healers to a certain extent, right? As a light worker, as a starseed, this is how I share what I bring through. Everybody has a different gift. We're all different pieces of the puzzle. We all have different views and different angles and different perspectives because many of us have different backgrounds. We all have different experiences, but we're all here on planet Earth, combining all of those beliefs, tools, frequencies, and bringing this multidimensional puzzle. And sometimes that can get a little wonky. It doesn't necessarily fit all together comfortably. And so I'm really called to remind from my perspective, I dip into all of those 3D, 4D, 5D, because I am part of all of those, right? I was born into, and I am growing as and creating from all of that. And so I've been really called to invite everyone who's tuning in to just come into a place where we can have conversations, to where we don't have to have conversations, both. And really recognize that there are little pieces of everything that we can pull from different teachers, from different systems, from different beliefs. And this is where many of us over lifetimes have gotten lost in translation. We think it's this way, therefore that's right, and you're wrong, right? And we're seeing that across the board. But oftentimes we don't recognize that. My guides keep telling me that the dice, there's more numbers on the dice, but we're only rolling with a particular hand. There's more colors in the Rubik's Cube because there's more shapes, right? And I could go on and on. So the more we can open to the fact that each of us holds a piece or a key, it then helps us to open a multitude of combinations. So I listen to teachers and I don't necessarily walk away because they say something I don't agree with. I get the nugget of the little gold nugget and I go, oh, okay, I can use that. Everything else, not for me. But I recognize through discernment what is and what isn't. And that discernment has come through a lot of self-work continuously. which one's right there, but, and I'm not here to negotiate with people. I'm not here to say that, that's just not what not my thing. And so that might be your thing or your friend's thing. Meaning that might be they love to negotiate. They love to kind of say, well, let's talk about this. And sometimes I do. But for the most part, I just want to share. That's all. So I'm just here to share. And as I share this, I'm going to share this other vision. So I'm being shown these strings with bubbles on them. And this string has a bubble, and all of those bubbles are nodes. And a node holds information. It holds spin, and it holds frequency and sound, right? So I don't know why I drew 3, but it was just an easy number to use, 3 and 3, which turns out to be 9. So I'm sure there's relevancy in this. And so I was shown these strings with these little bubbles on them, all kind of oscillating and vibrating. And those bubbles all hold within them a spin. And then I was shown them all coming together and twisting, not braiding. And the reason I was shown not braiding, because I was visualizing it and I kind of asked my higher self, well, are they going to braid together? And it could be braiding, but I was shown like a twisty cone of like strawberry, vanilla, and chocolate. And they were all twisting. And then at some point, they all kind of separate again for whatever reason. As these twist together, I was shown this other picture right here, that those points then almost, they touch, but they look more like this, right? So those colors all then picture strings, and we could call those dimensions, and we could call them timelines. My guidance team was kind of saying, think of them as more as dimension lines. And so just for the purpose of this video, we'll just say they're crossing of dimensions and time frames. So a frame holds a shape, and it holds a an energy, it holds a picture. So these all hold pictures, and essentially it's the veil from one perspective as well. So some of us are seeing things out of the corner of our eyes more often. The lights are flickering. And again, I use Stranger Things as a reference, like the upside down world, right? So the veil is so close because the bubbles are all kind of oscillating and sharing information. And it's a little bit like this, like a wave. And they bump, they connect, and then it's this constant exchange that's happening right now. And essentially what I was shown is sound. So a lot of people are feeling really overwhelmed right now because that's a lot of noise. 3D is really loud. 4D is like, what is going on? I think of 3D as like Alice in Wonderland weirdness. And then 5D I think of as much more settled, but lighter. I don't know. I have these different visions, but I'm just sharing to try to keep it simple. So these are all kind of connected at this point without being locked together. So we're weaving, but not in the way that we think we're weaving. And I could go in, I'm just trying to keep this video short. So what's happening is we're sharing information. So we're interacting with these other dimensions, and we are also simultaneously in all of these dimensions at the same time, because we're held within a bandwidth. You guys, again, this is just my perspective, and this might just be temporary, but we're held within this framework of multiple frameworks, and it's so thin, the bubbles are translucent, that it's almost like you could reach out and see these other dimensions, and then they're gone, and then they're back, and then they're gone. So it's really easy to get confused, is what I've been shown right now, unless you're doing the breathing, staying healthy, not necessarily tuning in to, I'm seeing people put their, when you put your finger in another dimension and it ripples out, but that's what's happening like a pond. So I'm a bubble and this bubble's right here, and I put my finger and it's like, and then it comes back. And I just am being sharing what I've been shown. So what's happening is, though, we're assisting all of those dimensions by being who we are, by us focusing our intent on creating that which brings greater good, higher joy, more expansiveness, supporting one another, and also, really importantly, supporting Mother Earth. Because if we're thinking of that, is it Earth, Terra, Gaia? I mean, we could go into so many different, but I'm being called not to get into that. And the reason I'm being called not to get into that, because that then is a story. And that story, while it holds a power. And while that story holds a power, we're writing and creating our own story within that book. So we might be in a different chapter than the chapter that our neighbor is in. And that book may be part of a series of books, but it may not even be in the same book, right? So that's the example of dimensions and timelines, but they're all connected. So the more we can appreciate that, the easier it is to let go of the need to project our view of how things really are on someone else. For example, like my husband, who says that is abstract to me, because it doesn't make it doesn't matter in their reference, in their part of the book, in their piece of the puzzle. They're doing what they need to do. And we may be able to provide insight or support, but that doesn't mean that that's how they're going to write their chapter. Yet it's all connected so seamlessly. So it really, from one perspective, it matters absolutely to know that we come from multi dimensions, and we have brothers and sisters that are galactic, and that is important. But it isn't the only truth. And the more we learn and the more we grow and the more we understand, I keep being called back to Isaac Newton and then Einstein and now so on and so forth. So Isaac Newton, that was the way it was, based on what we were told, based on what we knew then. But what we know now is different than what we knew then. Therefore, that doesn't make it wrong, because at the time it held a certain quantifying factor that put pieces of the puzzle together and held them in such a way that it made it more understandable. Therefore, it wasn't wrong. And now we're moving forward, we're looking back and saying there may have been some pieces that were missing in that puzzle. That doesn't mean we go and erase the entire building blocks that were useful for that particular, right? We can utilize some of them, and we just now shift them slightly. We add to them. We look at them and go, oh, this piece was missing. And what I've been shown over and over again is the math is different because we're in a different dimension. We're weaving these dimensions. Elements that were never found are being found. I think there's a whole new periodic table than when I was in school. Wow. Okay. These are the elements. Nope. So if the elements are different, then that means the building blocks of matter are made up possibly of different elements. We could go on and on. So if we start just really relaxing into it and having fun with it, it feels much more expansive, and it allows us to work with the fire and the alchemy from a much more chemical balance. And so I'm being called to talk about the chemical of all of this, because this is also a reference. So this was a reference to realities, but it's also our DNA somehow. What I was shown was jumping genes, and essentially when certain genes touch, or if there's a sound that has to do with our genetics, and science hasn't talked about this. Maybe they know about it and I just haven't read it, but there's a certain sound that is harnessed within our, or held within our DNA. And when the DNA jumps and changes, or lines up, different strands line up in a different, or they basically work off of each other. They communicate with each other. And what this does is this changes the entire frequency of our body, because the genetics aren't just inside of us, right? We have what's the right word? Quantum entanglement with other things. Our DNA is quantum. Our DNA is not just physical thing. It's also esoteric, I guess, if we want to call it that, for lack of better words. Okay. So, got a little lost there, squirrel. Okay. So the other thing that I was shown, back to Rock on Gold Dust Woman, is gold. Now, we all have, so if we look at gold, there's a lot of talk right now about gold and silver, right? And the value system, but there's also a lot of recognition that the elements are changing. Therefore, the value and what we find valuable might be changing in the future as well. Obviously, we know plutonium is valuable. We know certain types of elements are more valuable than others because of what they make or what we can create with them. So I've been shown that because the elements have changed and the pattern or structure of how we understand the chemical composition of our reality is also shifting, our understanding of it, more and more advancements will be at our disposal, so to speak. That's not the right word, but our creation at our fingertips. They already are. So what we invest in, literally in the physical, will also be different. Right? So we'll have new elements that will be useful for what we need in the future. And therefore they're already here because there is no past enemies. So as we look at this, we are rippling into these bubbles, and literally I was kind of shown that, you know, we have these new discoveries of animals. Oh, this animal existed. We didn't even know it existed. Or maybe it's been here the whole time and we just couldn't see it. Or maybe, I mean, we could keep going on and on with the, I think there was a part of the body, I can't remember what part it was, like, well, I talked about the heart. There's going to be there's a new piece of the heart, essentially, that's going to be discovered, the little fiber hairs. So there's all these different things that science is like, whoa, we didn't know that was there. As within, so without. We're going to find new things about the physical skin suit that we didn't know before, which is also going to change everything. Everything's changing. So this is having a ripple effect into all dimensions. So it isn't about us going from one to the other to the other. It's all intrinsically interconnected and interwoven. And if we start to look at things from that perspective, it allows us to take a step back and not have to get anywhere necessarily. We don't have to jump. Our genes are doing that for us by the vibration that we are holding on a consistent basis. So when we can get into a more state of coherence, heart coherence, we then create, the word that comes through is more space. We expand, right? Like a balloon. Okay. So this, one of the synchronicities that I had was talking about dust and gold. I've written about it so many times. And I'll share briefly, one of the writings that I wrote about, I think I did a video on it, but I can't remember, was holmium, helium, hotspot. And I might have called it something else, but I renamed it that, or I've added to it. It's in my blog if you're interested at carrieavon.com. And I've posted a lot on Instagram as well. But essentially, what I was shown is these new elements. And I've been writing about it for years. The math is going to change. The elements we're going to discover are different. And a lot of people have talked about this. It's not just me. I'm just one piece of the puzzle that's sharing my own little snippet or flavor of the spice, reference to Dune and dust. which is gold. So I always think of dust as gold and gold as dust. And I also think of it as the sands of time. For whatever reason, I just tie it all together. And not too far back, I had been seeing gold glitter in my view. And a few friends of mine had been on that same flow. I know Candace had been kind of seeing that, and Jess. And we were kind of talking about everything gold. I think even my friend Kat, a lot of us, I mean, maybe more than I'm even remembering right now, that were on that theme. And the reason I'm bringing that up is we were kind of bouncing it off each other. Kat was seeing it one way, Candace was seeing it one way, Jess was seeing it another way, and I was seeing it in my weird way. But we all pick up on synchronicities in different ways. We all pick up and sink into patterns in a different way, and we all have our own way of presenting them. And so this is where it's also important about having these conversations and recognizing that sometimes we're talking about the same thing, but we're presenting it in a different package. And I'm being called not to necessarily look at the package and go, well, that's not what I'm talking about. Look at the package, feel if that package resonates, and discern if that's part of the puzzle that I'm putting together. The jigsaw is what I'm hearing, because I wrote about jig, the dance that I'm dancing. And then play with that and see where it fits. And so I'm going to bring up a teacher who you may or may not resonate with, but I saw some big similarities there. So I'm going to share her most recent post. And so what I've been shown is that this dust, this gold, we're creating it, right? So we are gold dust, rock on gold dust woman, which that's funny because these songs communicate to us. And when did that song come out? Maybe the 70s or 80s? I don't know. 70s probably. And that song is communicating with me now because it's music and it's words and it holds a value that then pings off my sonar system to tell me I'm receiving a message, like the owl coming in from Harry Potter and dropping off that letter. That's what's happening. That's how I operate. And that's how we all operate to a certain extent, right? Some of us are just more aware of it than others. Also, I was seeing a reference to when I pulled the horse card, I'd been hearing the horse song by Echo and the Bunnymen. I don't know what it's called, but I was hearing that. I think it's Dancing Horses. I think it's Echo and the Bunnymen, which then always brings me to Donnie Darko, which brings me into time travel. I mean, you guys, we are getting messages in so many different ways. We're really being invited not to limit ourselves to when we listen to a story and go, well, that story's wrong because they use the color red and it's really blue. But everything else about it was a beautiful representation or possibly a metaphor or an analogy to what the message is. And so it's, what's that? Don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, I guess. And that's what a lot of people in the collective are doing, whether it's a message they're hearing socially, politically, economically. I can't even listen to that person because they are polarized to this side, whatever it might be. And that may be true. But that person might say one word, and I'm going to use it as an example, the clown movie. Ew. I used to hear that and be like, ew, but now I think of writing, clown chakra, the inverted upside down versus the origination of the story, spider as a creator. What are we creating? Are we creating more shadow? Are we creating more light? Am I projecting that into my picture? What am I, so we could go into so many different layers. That's how I play. So I had, I'll just share briefly the writing about the gold, and I'll share just the little pieces here. So I invite you just to kind of feel into what I wrote about. It's a little bit of flow, and then I'll come back to a video that just popped up in my awareness of someone else who is also talking about this in their own way. Another piece of the puzzle. And if you feel called to read this, I mean, it's hard. Some people think it's gibberish, and it kind of, I call it Jabberwocky. When I was writing, my higher self was like, I was like, my version as I was writing out this was like, what am I writing? And then I heard the word Jabberwocky, and it's just like, what's his name? Carol, who wrote Alice in Wonderland, which later became Alice in Wonderland, but it's a style of writing. It's a Portmanteau, involves a lot of combination of words and letters that are then carry within them ways to just, it makes you image things, imagine things, and tap into different, just from my perspective, different realities. So in this, this is titled, I'm not going to read the whole thing, Helium, Holmium, Hotspot. So there's layers and layers and layers, but essentially what I was being shown was electromagnetism. I said there's a narrow-minded gap, a big gap of narrow-mindedness that is closing somewhat. And I kind of see that again as reference to these lines braiding like a twisty treat ice cream cone. And it's kind of creating a discomfort. And what I wrote was, this frequency extends out like a stage. On top are sound waves. These sound and light waves move along a platform and intermingle and interweave into, along, and through the platform. The ones that dip below it dissolve. So we're sending out the signal. And I don't know, again, if I did a video and this is redundant, I really want to focus on some of these things that I've written about because it has to do with physics. And we're dissolving. The more we stay in a place of coherence, not sunshine and rainbows all the time, but just balance, and we find ourselves in our heart and compassion, we cancel out the other noise. And we send out a signal that literally projects into the future. And this creates continuously. If we are continuously creating, and all dimensions are essentially like a nesting doll, then it would only make sense that those energies also can ripple back out, like that bubble I talked about a minute ago. So I'm going to show you this picture. If I don't think I'm sharing screen yet, but if I bounce this yellow bubble, it's still going to ripple out into the red and blue, right? Those rings. And so they're literally kind of absorbing that frequency, which is a sound, which is a vibration, which our heart holds the key, our entire being and how we interact. Anyways, and this connects with Earth. And essentially what I wrote was, it dissolves. So all this disharmony kind of gets, it helps to squeeze out that sound so it doesn't stick. It just kind of bounces off and gets dissolved. There's a mass quantum scaling effect, a treble bound infusion, an unmasking. The sound layer of alchemy. This landscape pools out, ripples out, surges, if you will, in a layer bandwidth, banding with, and allowing for an unfolding development in a new cradle of time. So I had been shown that eventually these all merge into one, and maybe it's already happened, but I was being shown that they all combine into this. And it's not that those other lines then, it's almost like they dissolve. I'm not really sure. We could maybe think of it as DNA. You know, we have all these strands of DNA, but if it's all interacting and working together, those strands become a band of energy that works together. So it's no longer separate from one perspective. So this has multiple meanings, what I wrote about, and I'll come back and maybe do a video on all of this. It wraps it in a cocoon, miraculous conception. This elevates the expectancy rate. The ratios balance out. The homeward bound energies change gears, switch directions. In a sing-song capacitor, tremolo. I was hearing Lights Are Low moving in stereo. The song was big for me as well as Rush for a while. I'm going to come back to all this. And again, I might have already done this video, but we'll do this later. I want to get to the gold, and then so basically what happens is this is creating a sonnet, a sound that we're sending out through these bubbles. And the higher vibration you are, or better spoken, the more coherent you are, the longer the wave goes. And it doesn't dissipate. It just gets carried out longer and longer and longer. And it picks up speed from what I was shown. So it picks up speed and it bursts the bubbles that are stagnant, that are shorter from what I'm being shown. And I wrote about Ring of Fire. We are lit, writing the codes, looking within the battle. Well, okay, so I'm gonna have to do a video on all this. I don't think I did. Bear with me for just 1 second. The gold. A full bandwidth of technology is now lined up. It sits within a golden field of song, sound, glow. That's what we're creating. That's what we're lining up. So a full bandwidth, it's a new bandwidth of technology. That's a play on words. And I was seeing gold glitter, soft glitter, thinking of dust from the movie Golden Compass. Did I mention that? If you guys haven't watched that, that's got a lot of nuggets in it. Dark, his Dark Materials. This also has to do with dark matter, which is, from what I see, glue. The glue that holds all the stuff together, an electrical, plasmatic, magnetic glue. And the particles transmit a code to one another and work within this glue to exchange grid vocabulary. Now, what I'm talking about here is the body, our physical body, as well as Earth. So this was what I wrote back in September, this golden glittery light. I think I posted it in December. I might have reposted it recently because I was called back to this particular writing. So I'm going to do a video on this. Anybody that wants to nerd out with me, in case I didn't already, and I'll double check so I don't do it twice. But I'm inviting you guys, if you feel called, without any judgment, and the new video that came out that I was guided to watch all the way through, even though it was a little bit of a slow video, and it's not something, I don't always tune into all of this individual's videos, mostly because I'm kind of doing my own thing, but also time-wise, right? This is long enough. But whether or not you agree with this individual's philosophy or teachings, whether or not you agree with any person who is a teacher or on social media or on television or a teacher at a school, we may not always agree with everything that they have to say or have to share. But again, there's golden nuggets sometimes within the information that we're called to tune into. And this particular one, I will share her link in the description below, and it's Magenta Pixie. Now, I know some people might be triggered by that, and others will be full on, I'm going all in. I never am all in with anybody I listen to. However, I feel called to listen to certain people at certain times to help me, again, pull those pieces of the puzzle together and make more sense, or better spoken, they can offer a different perspective on what we might be feeling, tuning into, getting messages about. So there's these similarities. Have you guys ever seen like where there's a movie that comes out and it just so happens synchronistically that it lines up with what we've been seeing in our personal life or what we've been reading about, and all of a sudden this movie comes out that was filmed from 2 years ago and it's relevant for now? That's what I'm talking about. So it's really fun to play with that if we can be open-hearted and open-minded and just play with it. Again, the tidbits that I tune into, that I really focus on, is what she describes. She has this conversation with this meteorite, which is very, again, abstract, but I have conversations with crystals and rocks and earth all the time. So to me, it's my reality. To my husband, it's unreality. But it's okay, right? We're all in different places and spaces. So she talks about and I just encourage you to listen to the video. If you don't want to listen to it all the way through, maybe just fast forward halfway in and then go from halfway in to the end. And she talks about gold. And for me, I see gold and dust as interchangeable, but she talks about gold and the fact that the gold that we're creating is coming back into 3D. And it's basically another perspective and description of what I've been writing about. And I'm sure other people are tuning into this as well and sharing it in their own way. So ultimately, we're creating this sound, and this sound and this vibration is creating a new element, the fifth element, you might call it. And I got to go back and put all my writings together to kind of see where this all fits in. And this is, again, I think I already mentioned this, but it's going to change our value system and so on and so forth. So there are people in the financial community that are maybe just in 3D, or I don't even want to say just in 3D, just in 4D, just in 5D, because I feel like they interchange and they're all, again, the veil is right here. But let's say they just tune into that. That's what they're tuned into. That's what they're anchored into. And they're all about the gold and silver right now. But from a higher dimension, that means something completely different. Yet, it'll just like a fairy tale. You know, you can take it literally, or you can take it esoteric, or beyond esoteric, we could say multidimensionally, or not beyond, but you know, it's all connected. So there's patterns here, there's frequencies here, right? So on and so forth. So I will invite you guys to check that video out. I'll again provide the link, and I'm not going to go into too much detail other than the fact, I'll end on this note. We are creating on a massive scale right now. And when I say scale, it's a musical harmony. We're creating a sound and a song that is literally breaking through the net, the web that was perhaps connected to the upside down. And who, what, why, when, where, how is irrelevant for me. For some people, it's still relevant, and that's okay. No judgment. We all are interested in different things for different reasons. I've been there, done that, and that's not for me right now. It was, though, several years ago, and that's okay. I'm sharing that because, again, it's multiple angles, different perspectives at different times to offer us a different view, to broaden our view. So essentially, a lot of these things aren't literal, they're metaphorical, but a lot of them are literal. We know that we can talk about dragons are also interchangeable with ley lines, dragons in the earth, right? We can talk about the matrix, you know, I mean, we could go into so many different layers. And they are literal too, but you know what I'm saying. So play with it and see what resonates for you, and recognize what I'm sharing is for us to recognize that we are creating something truly big, even though it doesn't feel that way sometimes. And even though I'm going to end on this note. I had some moments that I reacted, I got fiery, and I allowed myself to kind of be pulled into the human condition of feeling not heard or angry, you know, the stuff that we all experience. We all go through that. And it was a temporary setback, if you will, or a temporary pause. And I didn't like the way it felt, but at the time it needed to be felt so that I could say now I didn't like the way it felt and I don't want to go back there. So I'm doing everything within my power to focus on what I'm creating. And I'm really being invited to remind everybody, don't beat yourself up, because we're creating more goodness than we think we are. So sometimes we're really hard on ourselves when we make a mistake. When we focus on something we shouldn't and we realize that it's been a complete waste of time. Maybe that's true, maybe it's not. There might have been something within that was necessary for us to experience in order to experience time in that way, or to experience a particular feeling, perspective, or just experience in general, to bring us to where we are now, or where we will be next week, or whatever it might be next year. So in love and light, guys, namaste.